My name is Elia Campbell, 32 years old, a financial consultant living in Boston. I was never the favored child, especially with a sister like Madeline, the family's golden girl. And me? I was the backup plan. But I never imagined that one seemingly ordinary evening at a family party they would mock me so openly. And when my father laughed along, I knew it was time to stop staying silent. I never imagined the day would come when my own family would humiliate me in front of over 60 people and find it funny. The party was held in an upscale banquet hall in Savannah to celebrate my sister Madeline's promotion as chief investment officer at a major financial firm. Everything was polished: red wine, string quartet, laughter, and fake hugs. I came alone, just me, my small clutch, and the last shred of dignity I had left. I had barely made it 5 feet into the room when the voice I knew too well cut through the air like a blade. "Elia, maybe you should try being a janitor. That job suits you better." Madeline laughed, raising her glass as the chandelier light danced off its crimson surface. The room erupted. Then came my father Gregory with the final blow. "At least you can't get fired from that." I froze, clutching my untouched glass, heart thudding. Only one thought echoed in my mind. I've stayed silent for far too long. They thought I was a failure. 3 job losses were enough for them to write me off as incompetent. None of them knew what I had discovered. Not yet. I swallowed hard, set my glass down, and walked toward the stage. "Mind if I say a few words?" I asked, my voice steady, unshaken. The room fell silent. That's when I knew this wouldn't just be me standing up. This was going to be the reckoning they never saw coming. I was used to being the shadow. Growing up, every spotlight in our house pointed at Madeline, the golden daughter of the Whitmore family. When she played Fur Elise flawlessly at 7, the whole family reacted like we'd just won an Olympic medal. At 10, she was crowned Little Miss Georgia, and her portrait went straight to the living room wall. By 17, she got into Cornell, and it was as if the entire universe revolved around her acceptance letter. Me? I was the smart but difficult one. I got a full scholarship to the University of Michigan for finance. No party, no toast. When I landed my first job at a small investment firm, my mom smiled. "My dad?" He muttered. "That's decent." Anyway, Madeline just got into a Manhattan internship. And just like that, my story was cut off before it even began. I used to believe I just needed to work harder, so I did twice as hard, 3 times harder. I said yes to overtime, earned certifications, took the projects no one wanted. But no matter how much I pushed, Madeline was always the one being praised, celebrated, cherished. The hardest part wasn't envy. I didn't want what she had. I just wanted to be seen even once as someone worthy, not the comparison child tacked onto the family album. It took me years to realize I wasn't lacking in ability. I was just lacking space in the hearts of the people who were supposed to believe in me the most. When my mother died, it felt like the world drained of color. But worse than the grief was the realization I had lost the only person in my family who ever truly saw me. My mother, Diane, wasn't like my father or Madeline. She never needed me to be perfect. She never compared me. When I fell, she didn't laugh or judge. She simply sat beside me and listened. She passed from lymphoma when I was 26. It happened so fast I still had unread texts from her saying, "Don't forget your follow-up." Madeline flew in from New York and stayed exactly 12 hours. She cried once at the service, posed for a family photo in front of the casket, then left before dawn. My father had already begun disappearing the moment Mom was diagnosed. After the funeral, it was like he ghosted me completely. The calls stopped. The texts became mechanical. "Your mom's gone. Focus on your career." But I didn't just lose a mother. I lost the last person who made me feel like I mattered. I was left drifting in a family that shared my blood but none of my heart. At every gathering, I was the forgotten name on the list. No one asked how I was holding up. No one really cared. Only one person had ever said to me, "You don't have to be anyone else. Just be you." And now she was gone. I got fired for the first time when I was 28. I figured it was just layoffs, standard corporate trimming. HR apologized, called me a talented asset, but said, "This decision came from above." I packed my things, walked out with my head up, telling myself, it's just bad luck. The second time came a year later, in a different state, at a completely different firm. The reason? Just as vague. Some concerns about cultural fit and brand alignment. No one accused me of wrongdoing. They just didn't think I belonged anymore. That time, something twisted in my gut. 2 jobs gone. No warnings, just a wall of cold silence. The third one nearly broke me. I was excelling leading a project team when I was suddenly called into the director's office. They said a client felt uncomfortable, and due to reputation risk, they had to let me go. No documentation, no incident report, no explanation. 3 companies, 3 states, 3 exits, where no one looked me in the eye and said, "You did this." I started to wonder, is this really my fault? I'm not perfect, but I work hard, I'm ethical, I speak up when it matters. There was a time I thought maybe I was cursed. But then, a part of me, the part that never flinched, the part my mother once called the storm in your bones, started whispering, if this isn't random, what is it? I didn't come back to Boston because I loved it. I came back because I needed to start over. Somewhere I could disappear into the crowd and start thinking clearly. I rented a small apartment in Beacon Hill, the kind with creaky wooden stairs and a tiny window that looked out onto a brick wall. I didn't have a full-time job anymore. Instead, I did freelance financial consulting for a few startups. Less money, sure, but what I needed most was time. I began digging. I pulled up old emails, meeting notes, records from each firing. And the more I looked, the more something didn't sit right. A pattern started to form, one that was eerily consistent. The phrasing in the HR emails was nearly identical. Reputation risk, client discomfort, no documented violations. Nothing direct, but all damning enough to stain me. Then one day, while cleaning out my spam folder, I saw an anonymous message. "She made sure you were out." Just saying. I read that line over and over again. She? They didn't say who, but I already knew. Deep down, I knew it was Madeline. Because I'd seen that look in her eyes too many times, the cold satisfaction when I stumbled, the faintest smirk when things went wrong for me. I didn't have proof, not yet, but I had suspicion. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like someone about to follow the thread. I knew I couldn't do this alone. If I wanted the truth, the kind buried deep behind corporate firewalls, I needed someone who knew tech better than I ever could. And there was only one person I trusted. Jules. My old college roommate, now a cybersecurity analyst in Cambridge. The same Jules who once hacked our dorm Wi-Fi just to win an argument. I texted her around midnight. "Remember me? I need a favor, a big one." Less than 2 minutes later, she FaceTimed me, groggy but sharp-eyed. "Elia? Holy hell, you're alive?" I gave a weak laugh. "Barely, but I've got something, Jules. Something big." An hour later, I was sitting in her apartment, facing a jungle of blinking monitors. I handed her everything I had. Old emails, termination dates, company names, and one final piece, the domain of Madeline's firm. "Just a hunch," I said. Jules raised an eyebrow. "You think your sister's involved?" I met her gaze, my voice low. "I think someone wanted me gone from this industry, and every time I disappeared, she benefited." She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll dig. Might take a few days." "Do whatever you have to. I just need to know." As I stepped out of her apartment that night, a chill ran down my spine. Because if I was right, the person who smiled beside me in family photos, who hugged me on birthdays, had been quietly burning down my career, piece by calculated piece. 3 days later, my phone buzzed at 1:14 a.m. A message from Jules. "You awake?" I replied instantly. Sleep had become a stranger. A minute later, her FaceTime lit up. Jules' face appeared, more serious than I'd ever seen. "Elia," she said, "I think you were right. And this goes deeper than you thought. She shared her screen. Lines of metadata, routing paths, and IP logs appeared, and then one name in bold. s.campbell@lexmorecapital.com. Madeline's work email. What am I looking at? I asked, my voice barely audible. Emails from your sister's company domain, sent to your former employers, disguised as anonymous complaints. But digital fingerprints don't lie. She pointed to the flowchart. The IP matches her office. The timestamps align with your terminations. She used internal whistleblower systems to report you 3 different allegations, all vague but serious enough to end your contracts. I swallowed hard. She accused me of data breaches? Not directly, Jules replied. Just enough to raise alarms. In finance, one whiff of scandal is all it takes for HR to pull the plug. I sank into the chair. I'd suspected. I'd hoped I was wrong. But here it was staring at me in black and white. My sister had orchestrated this nightmare step by calculated step. What kind of person does this to their own sister? I whispered. Jules paused, then said quietly, someone who sees you as a threat. I knew if I wanted to flip the game, I needed more than digital traces. I needed hard proof, the kind no one could deny. Jules told me she could find it. Draft emails, unsent messages, edit logs, if I could get access to Madeline's personal laptop. Then the opportunity came. Madeline posted a photo on Instagram. She was at a spa retreat in the Berkshires, wrapped in a white robe, sipping wine. I checked the date and time. I had a window. I drove to her Back Bay apartment around 11:30 p.m. I still had her spare key, the one she gave me 6 years ago when she went on a yoga retreat and forgot to cancel her Blue Apron delivery. I never gave it back. The building had a doorman, but he was asleep behind the desk. I walked in like I belonged, took the elevator to the 12th floor. My hands trembled slightly as I unlocked the door. Her place was immaculate. A showroom, not a home. The laptop sat on the kitchen counter, charging. I whispered a thank you to her arrogance. I plugged in the USB Jules had custom-coded. It began scanning everything tied to my name. Within 10 minutes, the screen lit up. 17 documents with Elia Campbell. 6 with reputation risk. 3 HR Drive aft complaints. 1 spreadsheet tracking my job history. I opened one file. We recommend caution regarding Ms. Campbell due to prior ethical concerns. The language was surgical, perfectly crafted to kill a career, without ever naming a crime. But the metadata didn't lie. Every word had been written, edited, and saved on Madeline's machine. I copied everything, pulled the USB, put everything back exactly as I found it. And before leaving, I looked around her apartment one last time. The polished perfection was about to crack wide open. The invitation was printed on thick, cream-colored paper, faintly scented with expensive perfume, as if to soften the reality that I was just an afterthought. Handwritten in cursive. Close family. Celebrating Madeline Campbell's appointment as Chief Investment Officer at Lexmore Capital. I almost threw it away. But instead, I pinned it to the fridge as a reminder. This time, I wasn't stepping back. 2 days later, my father called. His voice carried that same cold distance, like he was checking a box. You'll be there, right? It's an important night for your sister. I wanted to ask, what about me? When will I get an important night? But I simply said, I'll come. I didn't go for Madeline. I went to end the performance in a way they never saw coming. The party was held on the top floor of the Fairley Hotel in downtown Boston. Crystal lights, string quartet, polite laughter echoing off marble. I arrived alone. Navy sheath dress, minimal makeup. Just me, a small clutch and a silver USB holding the truth. Madeline looked like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Glittering dress, perfect smile, eyes sharp as glass. When she saw me, she paused just for a beat, then plastered on her social smile. Elia! Wow! Didn't think you'd show. Why wouldn't I? I said, meeting her gaze. You look well-rested. I sleep very well these days, I replied evenly. Guilt doesn't keep me up. Her eyes flickered just for a second. But I saw it. and I knew tonight I would be the one to end the story. As the applause for my father's toast began to fade, I stood up. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. I walked toward the stage with a calm smile. "Mind if I say a few words?" I asked, locking eyes with Madeline. The room went silent. Madeline froze. Her wine glass paused mid-air. My father leaned toward the mic, ready to interrupt, but it was too late. I was already there, standing in front of them all. "I know tonight is meant to honor my sister," I began, "but if we're celebrating family, then maybe it's time we talk honestly just once." I pulled a slim folder from my clutch-printed emails, draft complaints, timeline spreadsheets, all pulled from Madeline's personal laptop. "I was fired 3 times in 3 years, I said, voice unwavering. Each time, no clear reason, no direct accusations, just one repeated phrase, reputation risk, and I believed I wasn't good enough. Chairs shifted. People I'd known for years, relatives, former colleagues, began looking at me differently. But the truth is, I held up the folder. None of it was random. Every dismissal was planned, traced back to one email address, one person. I turned to my sister. "Madeline, you had everything. Career, prestige, Dad's constant praise. But that wasn't enough, was it?" I took a breath. "I'm not here to speak badly of you. I'm here to let everyone read what you wrote yourself." No one laughed. No one clapped. Just silence. And for the first time, my sister's eyes didn't hold triumph, they held fear. I walked off the stage not expecting applause, and I didn't get any. No music. No whispers. Just thick, lingering silence. Behind me, I heard the unmistakable sound of a wine glass shattering on the floor. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 43 unread messages. Some were from distant relatives who had barely acknowledged me before. "We had no idea. You were so brave last night." Madeline looked like she saw a ghost. But then came the ones I never expected. A former manager messaged, "I owe you an apology. You were one of the sharpest minds on my team." A recruiter I hadn't spoken to since 2020 wrote, "If you're reopening your consulting work, we'd love to talk." And then the one from Lexmore Capital's ethics department. "An internal investigation has been initiated. You may be contacted." I didn't reply, not yet. I needed air. I went for a walk along the Charles River, the morning sun dancing on the water like nothing had exploded the night before. For the first time in years, I felt something break free inside me. That afternoon, my father called. I saw his name flash across the screen and let it ring. He texted immediately after. "We need to talk. You embarrassed us." Not her. Us. Even now, with all the truth laid bare, I was still the problem. I didn't text back. And somehow, that didn't hurt anymore. 2 weeks after the party, I got an email with the subject line, "Your story matters. Let's talk." It was from Dr. Elaine Morgan, director of the Women in Finance Leadership Initiative at MIT. She had read about what happened and wanted me to speak. Not as a victim, but as a voice. And I said yes. I stood at the podium in a glass-walled conference room at MIT, facing hundreds of young women with laptops, notebooks, and eyes filled with hope. I didn't talk about betrayal as a wound. I spoke of it as a road uneven, lonely, but one that led me to freedom. I spoke about being cast aside by my own family, about being fired with no answers, about the nights I lay awake, convinced I wasn't enough. And then, I told them about that night when I stood up, not to be accepted, but because I knew I was already worthy. When I finished, no one clapped politely. They stood, and one young woman approached me drowning in an oversized blazer, clutching a stack of resumes. "I'm scared," she said quietly. "I'm scared I'm too small to survive in this world." I looked her straight in the eye. "Then build a world where you fit," I said. A month later, I moved to a little harbor house in Portland, Maine. Mornings smelled like salt and wind pouring through the windows. I work remotely now this time. I choose who I partner with. Not more begging. Not more proving. Sometimes I still think about that night. The way they laughed. And how the room fell silent. not because I destroyed them, but because I finally refused to be destroyed. Life isn't always fair, especially when you're born into a family where love is measured by comparison, not connection. Elia wasn't perfect. She stumbled, doubted herself, and stayed silent out of fear. But the moment she chose to stand up, to speak truth with her head held high, that was the moment she took her power back. This story isn't just about betrayal within a family. It's a reminder for all of us. Sometimes, the people who hurt you most share your last name. But that doesn't mean you have to accept it forever. Silence can break your spirit, but truth, however painful, will always be the light that leads you out of the dark. If you've ever felt dismissed, judged, or unheard, remember this. You don't need permission to exist. You don't need to apologize for who you are. And sometimes, the bravest act isn't shouting, it's calmly standing up, presenting the facts, and letting the truth speak for itself. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If Elia's journey inspired you in any way, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Share your thoughts or even your own story, because you're not alone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story where every silenced voice gets its chance to rise.